My heart raced as I stood there, in the middle of the private jet, staring at Stephen, my husband of 12 years. He was glaring at me with cold eyes, a look I had never seen before. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're getting off this plane, Nneka. You have no place here anymore." The words stung, each one heavier than the last. The hum of the engines seemed to fade as I took a step back, my breath catching in my throat. "What are you talking about, Stephen? What's going on?" My voice trembled, but I was determined not to break down in front of him. Stephen's face twisted into something ugly, something I couldn't recognize. "I'm done. Your father's billions aren't going to save you this time. You don't belong here. You've used me for far too long, Nneka. It's over." A wave of disbelief washed over me. My father's wealth, his multimillion-dollar empire, had always been a topic of contention between us, but I never thought it would come to this. Our marriage had always been rocky, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. I glanced out the window, the sprawling city of Lagos far below us. My mind was spinning, trying to make sense of everything. How had things gotten this bad? How had the man I loved, the man who had promised to cherish me, become this a monster? My thoughts were interrupted by his voice again, sharper now. "Get off this jet, Nneka. I'm not playing with you." I could feel my chest tightening. This wasn't just a fight. This wasn't just a disagreement. This was betrayal, infidelity. It was as if the man I had married had never existed. "Stephen, please, what about the kids?" I managed to whisper, my voice barely audible over the roaring engines. "What about everything we've built together?" He scoffed, turning away from me, as if I were nothing more than an inconvenience. "Your kids are nothing but a pawn in this game, Nneka. Your father's money doesn't even matter anymore. I'm done with you." Tears pricked at my eyes, but I held them back. There was no way I was going to cry in front of him. Not now, not like this. I was stronger than this. But deep down, I knew something had broken in me. Something irreparable. I tried to steady myself, but the weight of the moment felt unbearable. It was as though my entire world was crashing down in that very second. "Please, Stephen," I pleaded, my voice raw. "Let's talk about this. We can work through it. I swear, I didn't mean to." He cut me off, his voice cold as ice. "I'm not listening to any more of your lies, Nneka. Get off the plane. Now." I felt a cold chill run through me. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. He wasn't just angry. He was done. As the plane descended, I had no choice but to gather my things. My mind was still reeling from the shock, the betrayal. I had no idea where I would go, no idea what to do next. All I knew was that the man I thought I loved, the man I had trusted with everything, had just kicked me out of his life and his private jet. I took one last look at Stephen, standing there, his face devoid of emotion. My heart shattered into a million pieces, but I couldn't afford to break down. Not yet. The door to the jet opened, and I stepped out into the unknown. Welcome to Stories by Nneka. Thank you so much for your incredible support. Your likes, comments, and shares mean the world to us. Before we dive into today's heart-wrenching story, please subscribe to this channel, turn on the notification bell, and drop a comment below. Let us know where you're watching from. Are you tuning in from Lagos, New York, London, or somewhere else? We love connecting with our global family. I stumbled down the narrow steps of the jet, the cold wind hitting my face like a slap. The harsh reality of what had just happened sank in deeper with each step I took. This wasn't some petty argument. This wasn't a simple marital disagreement. No, this was a complete rejection, a public humiliation in the worst possible way. I watched the jet rise into the sky, leaving me standing there, alone. My mind raced back to all the good times, the moments when Stephen and I were happy. Those days seemed so distant now, like a lifetime ago. How could this man, the father of my children, the one who swore he'd never leave me, turn on me like this? Was everything we had together just a lie? The airport was bustling, but in that moment, I felt isolated in the crowd. I pulled my phone out, but there was no use in calling Stephen. The number was blocked. His words still echoed in my head, cold and unforgiving. I'm done with you. I needed to figure out what to do next. But where could I go? My family was in Lagos, but after what happened, I couldn't turn to them. Not with the shame of everything that had just happened. Not with the possibility that Stephen's lies might have already spread like wildfire, making me the center of ridicule. I had to think, had to breathe, but my thoughts were clouded with one overwhelming question. Why? Why had Stephen done this? What had changed? My mind returned to the beginning of our marriage, when I had met Stephen in the lively streets of Lagos. He was charming, ambitious, and had that spark about him that made every woman want to be around him. He had known exactly what to say to make me feel special. We had dreams of building an empire together, of raising our children in a world full of possibilities. But somewhere along the line, things shifted. The signs had been there all along, but I had ignored them. His late nights at work, his distant attitude, his constant need for reassurance that I was still there for him. And then came the women. I tried to dismiss it at first, the way his eyes lingered on other women when we were out together. It was subtle, easy to overlook. But then the calls, the whispers, it all started to add up. He had been cheating. It was clear now. He'd never loved me the way he claimed. I had been a pawn, a part of his plan to elevate himself, to get access to my father's wealth. I had known about my father's empire for years. My father, Chief Okoro, had built a multimillion-dollar business from the ground up. He wasn't just rich, he was powerful. And for Stephen, that had always been the end goal. He'd always acted as if he loved me, but deep down, I knew it was the money he wanted. But I never thought he would go this far. I never thought he would humiliate me, kick me out of our marriage for the world to see, all for the sake of greed. A cold shiver ran through me as I realized that he had used me, and now he was discarding me like I was nothing. The pain of that realization cut deeper than anything I had ever felt. I dialed the number I had been avoiding for months. My best friend, Adaora. She was one of the few people I knew who would understand, who wouldn't judge me. After 3 rings, she picked up. Nneka? What happened? I saw the news. Is everything okay? Adaora's voice was soft, but I could hear the concern in it. I hesitated, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. He kicked me out, Adaora. He's gone. Just like that. All because of my father's money. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Adaora spoke, her voice steady, like she was preparing for battle. Nneka, don't let him break you. You're stronger than this. I'll be there for you. Where are you now? I don't know, I whispered, feeling lost. I don't know where to go. You come to me, Nneka. I'm at my place and I'm not going anywhere. We'll figure this out. I let out a shaky breath, feeling a small sliver of hope return. Maybe Adaora was right. Maybe I could start over. But the thought of facing the world after the scandal Stephen had caused, the betrayal of everything I had believed in, felt like a mountain too high to climb. But then I thought about my children. They needed me. I needed to be strong for them. I couldn't let Stephen's cruelty destroy me. I had to find a way out of this, even if it meant starting from scratch. I had been kicked out of the jet, out of the marriage, but I refused to be kicked out of my own life. I took a deep breath. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. I arrived at Adaora's apartment late that night, the soft glow of the city lights casting long shadows on the streets of Lagos. Her place, as usual, was warm and welcoming, the familiar scent of her jasmine candles filling the air. She had always been the kind of friend who made everyone feel at home, no matter the situation. As I stepped inside, Adaora was already waiting for me, her eyes full of concern. "Come here, Nneka," she said, pulling me into a hug. I wanted to break down, to let all the pain and anger flood out, but I held it in. I had to be strong. For my children. For myself. We sat down on her couch, and I told her everything. The private jet incident, Stephen's cold words, the years of manipulation. She listened, her face a mixture of disbelief and anger. "I knew something was off, Nneka," she said, shaking her head. "I saw the way he looked at you sometimes, like you were just his ticket to something bigger. But I never imagined he'd go this far. You deserve so much better." I nodded, grateful for her words, but the ache in my chest wouldn't go away. I still couldn't shake the image of Stephen's face as he'd thrown me out. It was as if I had been nothing to him, a tool to get to my father's wealth, and now, when he no longer needed me, I was disposable. Adaora took a deep breath, her gaze softening. "Nneka, I know this is hard, but you need to stop blaming yourself. You didn't ask for this. You didn't deserve this. You're a strong woman. You'll get through this. But you need to think about what's next." "What's next?" I repeated, the words tasting foreign on my tongue. I had no idea. I had been so focused on surviving the pain of the moment that I hadn't even considered the future. "I don't know what to do, Adaora. I can't go back to Stephen, and I can't go back to my father's house. Not after everything that happened." Adaora's eyes narrowed slightly, and I saw a flicker of something. "You know, there's always the option of taking things into your own hands. You don't have to let him get away with this." I looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" "Nneka, your father's assets are worth billions. Stephen may think he can just walk away from you because of that, but there's a lot more to it than that. You have legal rights, Nneka. You've been married to him for over a decade. You're entitled to more than just the crumbs he's left you with. You can make him pay for what he's done." Her words hit me like a bolt of lightning. I hadn't even considered the legal angle. After all, marriage wasn't just about love. It was also about the legal protections and rights that came with it. And Stephen had crossed a line. A big one. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to fight him, Adaora," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "You are stronger than you think," she replied firmly. "And I'm going to help you. We'll find a lawyer who can help you take control of your life again. You don't have to let him win." I took a deep breath, the weight of her words settling in my chest. She was right. I had been a passive participant in my own life for too long. I had let Stephen dictate the terms of our marriage, let him use me as a stepping stone. But no more. I stood up, feeling a surge of determination course through me. "Okay, let's do this. Let's make him pay for what he's done to me." Adaora smiled, her eyes shining with pride. "That's the spirit. We'll start by getting a lawyer, someone who knows how to handle situations like this. And we'll make sure that Stephen knows exactly what he's up against." But as we started making plans, a thought crept into my mind, one that I couldn't shake off. What if there was more to Stephen's betrayal than I knew? What if the affair was only the tip of the iceberg? My heart raced as I thought about the woman who had come up in conversation every now and then. Mimi, Stephen's friend from the office. Could she have been more than just a friend? Could she have been the reason behind all of this? I didn't know, but I was going to find out. Adaora and I stayed up late that night, making plans and strategizing for the next step. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just about fighting for my share of Stephen's wealth. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my strength, and my life. The next few days were a blur. Adaora and I worked tirelessly, gathering information, finding a lawyer, and preparing ourselves for what would be a long, hard battle. But as the days passed, the excitement of planning began to give way to an unsettling feeling deep in my gut. There was still so much I didn't know, so much I hadn't seen, and I was terrified of what I might uncover. I spent hours searching through old messages, bank statements, and even receipts I had kept from the many trips Stephen and I had taken. The more I looked, the more I realized that Stephen had been keeping secrets from me for a long time. And not just any secrets. Secrets that were tied to the very things I feared most, betrayal, infidelity, and money. It was one evening, as I was going through Stephen's old emails, that I found something that sent a chill down my spine. A series of emails exchanged between Stephen and an unfamiliar name, Mimi. The emails weren't exactly flirtatious at first, but there was something in the tone, something that made my blood run cold. They were discussing things like moving the funds and handling the property in his name. I didn't understand all the details, but one thing was clear. This wasn't just a simple affair. There was more going on here. Much more. I tried to focus, reading each email carefully. The more I read, the more certain I became that Stephen and Mimi weren't just involved in a workplace fling. They were planning something together. But what? What was the connection between my husband, this woman, and my father's empire? I took screenshots of everything, determined to have a full record of what I had uncovered. Edaora was right. I wasn't just fighting for my dignity. I was fighting for control over my own future. The next day, I called Edaora and asked her to come over. When she arrived, I could see the concern in her eyes. "What did you find, Nneka?" she asked, her voice low. Knowing I wouldn't call her over unless it was something big, I handed her my phone, showing her the emails. Her eyes widened as she scrolled through them. "This isn't just an affair, Nneka. This is about money and power." "Exactly," I said, my voice trembling. I knew there was more to it. I could feel it. He's been planning something with her. Something involving my father's business. I just don't know how deep it goes. Edaora's face tightened, and I could see the gears turning in her head. "This is bad, Nneka. If they're involved in your father's business, this could be bigger than you think. You need to be careful. They could be trying to take everything from you." My stomach twisted at the thought. Could Stephen have been plotting behind my back this whole time? Was his love for me just a lie to get closer to my father's wealth? It felt like my whole world was unraveling with every piece of information I uncovered. But even as I pieced together these fragments, something told me this wasn't the whole story. Mimi might be a part of this betrayal, but there was still more that I didn't understand. Why would Stephen risk everything, including his marriage and his children, for money? What had driven him to this? There were too many unanswered questions, and I wasn't going to rest until I found the truth. That afternoon, I decided to take a bold step. I reached out to a private investigator, someone I'd used once for a business matter years ago. I needed to find out everything I could about Mimi and her connection to Stephen. I had to know what they were planning, how far their treachery went, and most importantly, how I could take control of my life back. I could feel the weight of the decision settle in my chest. Once I opened this door, there would be no turning back. The world I had built with Stephen, the family I thought I had, would be completely shattered. But it was already broken. I had no choice now but to rebuild, this time on my terms. The investigator agreed to meet me the next day. But as I hung up the phone, a sickening thought crept into my mind. What if Stephen knew? What if he was already one step ahead of me? The next morning, I sat in a small, dimly lit cafe, nervously tapping my fingers on the table as I waited for the private investigator to arrive. Edaora had insisted on coming with me, but I told her it was something I needed to do alone. My gut told me this wasn't just about exposing Stephen's betrayal. This was about taking control, finding my own path forward, and reclaiming my dignity. I couldn't let anyone else handle this but me. The door swung open, and in walked a tall, middle-aged man with graying hair, dressed in a sharp suit. His eyes scanned the room, and when he saw me, he walked over. "Nneka?" he asked, extending his hand. I nodded, shaking his hand firmly. "Yes, you must be Mr. Chijioke. Please call me Chijioke. I've been briefed on your situation, and I understand the urgency. Let's get to the bottom of this." He took a seat across from me, his expression serious. I handed him the phone, showing him the emails between Stephen and Mimi. "I need to know everything about this woman. I need to know what she's planning with my husband, and what they've been doing behind my back. I can't sit back and let them destroy everything. Chijioke studied the phone for a moment, then nodded. I'll take care of it. But I need to ask you something first, Nneka. Have you considered the possibility that Stephen might have been planning this for years? That this might not be the first time he's pulled something like this? His question sent a cold shiver down my spine. What do you mean? Chijioke leaned in, his voice low. It's not uncommon for people to hide their true motives for a long time, especially when money and power are involved. You mentioned your father's empire, but what if Stephen wasn't just after the wealth? What if there's something deeper here? I swallowed hard, trying to keep my composure. What are you saying? Nneka, I've been around long enough to know that these things often go back further than we think. Sometimes people don't just want the money, they want control. And your father's empire is a goldmine. Stephen might have thought that if he married you, he'd have access to more than just your love. He might have seen you as a means to an end. The weight of his words hit me hard. Was Stephen's betrayal just a matter of money? Had he been using me all along? Or was there something else I was missing? I felt a lump form in my throat, but I swallowed it down. So, what should I do now? Chijioke pulled out a notepad and jotted something down. I'm going to need to do a full background check on Mimi and Stephen. But first, I need you to think about something very carefully. Is there anyone in your life? Someone close to you? Who could have known about Stephen's plans? Maybe even someone who might have helped him along the way. The question caught me off guard. I thought back to the people who had been closest to me over the years, my parents, my siblings, Adaora. But there was one person who stood out. My brother, Chuka. Chuka and I had always had a complicated relationship. He'd been distant for years, ever since he had fallen into bad company, but he had always been close to Stephen. They had worked together in the past, and I had always brushed it off as harmless. But now, with the way Stephen had treated me, I couldn't help but wonder, had Chuka been in on this? I think I need to talk to Chuka, I said slowly. He's always been close to Stephen, but I never suspected anything. I never thought. Chijioke nodded. It might be worth investigating. People often hide things from the ones closest to them. Don't rule out anyone just yet. As Chijioke made his exit, my thoughts were a tangled mess. If Chuka was involved, it would change everything. But how could I confront him? How could I even ask the questions without revealing everything I had uncovered? I couldn't do this alone anymore. I needed to confront Stephen, Mimi, and maybe even Chuka. But how? How could I expose the truth without losing everything? Later that day, I went to see my brother. His house was quiet, almost too quiet, and as I stepped inside, I felt an overwhelming sense of unease. Chuka looked up from his laptop and gave me a tight smile. Nneka, what brings you here? His tone was casual, but I could sense something was off. The way his eyes shifted nervously when he saw me standing there, the way he quickly closed the laptop, it all felt wrong. I need to talk to you, Chuka, I said, my voice steady. It's about Stephen. His face immediately changed, the smile slipping from his lips. What about Stephen? I sat down across from him, staring him down. I know what's been going on. I know about Mimi. I know about everything. And I need to know, were you involved? Chuka's eyes widened, and for a split second, I saw fear flash across his face. But then he quickly masked it with a shrug. Nneka, what are you talking about? You've been through a lot lately. Maybe you're just imagining things. I'm not imagining anything, Chuka, I said, my voice sharp. I know what Stephen has been up to, and I'm not going to let him or anyone else destroy me. So, tell me the truth. Were you a part of this? Chuka's silence spoke volumes, and for the first time I knew he was hiding something. The silence in the room was deafening. Chuka's face was a mixture of guilt and frustration, his eyes darting away from mine as if he couldn't bear to meet my gaze. I had asked the question, but I still didn't know if I was ready to hear the answer. The tension between us was palpable, and I could feel the years of unresolved issues bubbling to the surface. Nneka, listen, Chuka started, his voice hesitant. This isn't what you think it is. I leaned forward, my patience wearing thin. Then what is it, Chuka? Because right now it feels like you've been hiding something from me. It feels like you've been helping Stephen and Mimi behind my back. I need to know the truth. Chuka let out a long sigh, rubbing his temples as if the weight of the conversation was too much for him to bear. It's not what you think, he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. I never wanted you to get caught up in this. I never wanted you to be hurt. I felt my heart race, my thoughts spinning in 1,000 directions. Then why, Chuka? Why didn't you tell me? You knew about Stephen and Mimi, didn't you? He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. For a moment I thought he might deny it. But then, to my shock, he nodded. Yes, I knew. I didn't know everything, but I knew they were involved. I felt the floor beneath me shift. The betrayal was unbearable. My own brother, the person I had trusted most in this world, had known about Stephen's infidelity and had kept it from me. So, you knew he was cheating on me with her? I asked, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Chuka looked away, his face contorted in guilt. It wasn't like that, Nneka. I didn't know the full extent of what was going on. All I knew was that Stephen had been distant, and he started making weird comments about your father's business. It wasn't until later that I realized he was after something more than just you. He was after your father's empire. And Mimi, well, she was part of it. I felt a surge of anger rise within me. So, you just let this happen? You knew, and you did nothing? Chuka opened his mouth to speak, but then closed it again. He was struggling to find the right words. I didn't know how to stop it, Nneka. I didn't know how deep Stephen had gone. He promised me he'd take care of you, that everything would stay normal. But then, things started to change. And I didn't want to drag you into it. I was furious. Every word he spoke seemed to just dig the knife deeper. You didn't want to drag me into it? Chuka, you're my brother. You should have told me. You should have warned me. He was silent for a long moment, his eyes searching mine. I know, and I'm sorry, but it's not just about Stephen and Mimi. There's more going on here, Nneka. I don't want you to go into this blind. There's a lot more at stake than you realize. I leaned forward, my curiosity piqued. What do you mean, Chuka? What else is there? He hesitated again, looking around as if he was checking for anyone who might overhear us. I've been hearing things. People have been talking. About Stephen and Mimi, yes, but also about some of the people your father works with. There are some powerful figures in the business world who want a piece of your father's empire. And Stephen, well, he's been playing both sides. He's been working with these people. My mind raced, trying to process everything Chuka had just told me. My father's business, was it being threatened? Was Stephen involved in something far more dangerous than infidelity? My heart sank as I realized that Stephen hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. He had put our entire family's legacy at risk. You mean to say that Stephen was working with other people, plotting against my father's empire? I asked, my voice low, barely above a whisper. Chuka nodded slowly. Yes, and I think you need to be very careful, Nneka, because whatever Stephen has gotten himself into, it's bigger than just a personal betrayal. It's about power, control, and money. A chill ran down my spine as I processed his words. This was no longer just about my marriage. This was about a conspiracy that reached far beyond what I could have ever imagined. Stephen wasn't just a cheating husband. He was a man involved in something much darker. And I had no idea how deep this web of lies and deceit went. Chuka, I need to know everything, I said, my voice steadier now, though my hands were shaking. I need to know exactly what Stephen is planning, and how it all ties back to my father's business. I can't let him destroy everything. Chuka looked at me, his face a mixture of fear and regret. I'll help you, Nneka. I'll tell you everything I know. But you need to understand, once you start digging into this, there's no going back. Steven won't just give up. And there are people out there who will stop at nothing to get what they want. I nodded, determined. I'm already in this, Chuka. I've been in it from the moment Steven kicked me off that plane. I won't let him win. I won't let him tear apart everything I've built. But deep down, a sense of dread lingered. What if there were more secrets? What if everything I thought I knew was a lie? The truth was out there, but it was buried beneath layers of betrayal, greed, and deception. And I was about to uncover it all. The next few days were a blur of frantic calls, meetings, and sleepless nights. Chuka and I kept in constant touch as I tried to piece together the web of lies surrounding Steven, Mimi, and the shady dealings that had been brewing beneath the surface for months, if not years. Every conversation, every revelation, felt like a punch to the gut, but I couldn't stop now. I had to keep going. My life, my family, my legacy, all of it depended on what came next. The more I uncovered, the more the walls around me seemed to close in. Chuka, though reluctant to fully reveal everything, began to open up more, each new detail painting a clearer picture of what had been happening behind my back. Steven wasn't just in debt, Nneka, Chuka confessed one evening over the phone. He was in deep with some dangerous people. People who want what your father has. This wasn't just about money, it's about control. He was trying to secure his future by aligning himself with the right people. And Mimi? She was more than just his partner in crime. She was the key to it all. I felt a wave of nausea hit me. You mean to say Steven was using me the entire time? All this time I thought he loved me. I thought we had a future together. But it was all just a game to him. It wasn't just about you, Nneka, Chuka said, his voice tinged with regret. It was about your father. Steven never wanted to just be your husband. He wanted your father's empire. He wanted control over everything your father built. And Mimi? She was working with him to make sure he got it. Do you know who these people are, Chuka? My voice was cold now, sharper. The pain from the betrayal still stung, but the anger was beginning to take over. Who else is involved in this? What's the endgame? He hesitated, then whispered, I don't know all the details, but I've heard rumors about a business deal, something involving your father's offshore accounts. It's all connected to these men, dangerous men, Nneka. And Steven, he was playing both sides, pretending to be loyal while he planned his move. He thought your father wouldn't suspect a thing. I stood there in silence, my mind racing as I tried to process the enormity of what Chuka was saying. Steven had been pretending for years, playing a game of manipulation and deceit. He had lied to me, to my family, and had been willing to destroy everything for power and money. And Mimi, she wasn't just a lover. She was a player in this twisted scheme, helping Steven work his way into the heart of my father's business. I took a deep breath. We need to stop them, Chuka. We need to stop this before it gets any worse. But as I said the words, doubt crept into my mind. Could I really take on Steven, Mimi, and the unknown players involved? Could I expose them without destroying my family in the process? Chuka's voice broke through my thoughts. Nneka, there's something else you need to know. I don't think Steven knows you've started digging into this, but he's getting suspicious. You need to be careful. If he finds out, he won't hesitate to turn everything against you. I gripped the phone tighter. I'm not backing down, Chuka. I can't. But I'll be careful. I need to know what Steven's next move is. I'll keep digging, Chuka said. But you need to prepare yourself. The truth isn't pretty. And once it comes out, there's no turning back. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind was spinning, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw Steven's face. The coldness in his eyes when he kicked me off the jet, the man who had once promised to love me forever. And now he was my enemy. As the hours passed, a plan began to form in my mind. I had to find a way to take back control. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the battle ahead would be harder than I could imagine. I wasn't just fighting for my marriage anymore. I was fighting for my father's legacy, for my children's future, and for my own dignity. The next morning, I went to see a lawyer. I needed someone who could help me navigate the mess Stephen had created. I needed to understand my options, my rights, and what kind of fight I was really facing. The lawyer's office was sleek, modern, and cold. Everything I needed to remind me that this was no longer a personal matter. This was business. This was war. After we went over everything, the lawyer looked at me, his face serious. "This is going to be a difficult case, Nneka. You've got the legal grounds to challenge Stephen. You're entitled to a portion of the assets. But you need to understand that if you go after him, he's going to fight back. He won't go down without a fight." "I know," I replied, my voice steady now. "But I'm ready. I'm not going to let him destroy everything. I'll fight for what's mine." As I left the lawyer's office, I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. But something had shifted inside me. I was no longer the woman who had been blindsided by betrayal. I was a woman with a plan, a woman who was going to fight for her family, for her future, and for her place in this world. I didn't know what the next steps would be, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let Stephen or anyone else take anything from me again. The days after my visit to the lawyer were a blur of meetings, strategy sessions, and sleepless nights. Every moment, every detail, felt like it was pushing me deeper into a storm I wasn't sure I could survive. But there was no turning back now. The weight of everything, my children, my father's empire, and my shattered marriage, pushed me forward. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for what I believed in. The plan was simple but dangerous. I would expose Stephen's betrayal, uncover his shady business dealings, and get the legal documentation to prove it. But beneath the surface of that plan lay a much darker truth. This wasn't just about Stephen being a cheating husband. It was about power, manipulation, and greed. I met with Chijioke, the private investigator, again. This time I had more questions. The longer this dragged on, the more I realized how little I actually knew about the people Stephen was dealing with. I had to uncover everything about the connections Stephen had built, his alliances with dangerous people, and how deep he had sunk into this conspiracy. Chijioke handed me a thick folder when we met. "This is what I found," he said quietly, his eyes scanning the room like he was afraid someone was listening. I dug into Mimi's background. She's not just some office affair. She's connected to a network of people who specialize in financial manipulation and corporate espionage. These are people who stop at nothing to get what they want. I flipped open the folder, my hands trembling. The documents inside were full of names I didn't recognize, companies I didn't know. But there, in the middle of it all, was a name I had heard in passing. Nnamdi Okafor, a businessman with a reputation for ruthlessness and shady deals. The same man who had been in talks with my father about a merger just months before everything with Stephen started to go downhill. "Nnamdi Okafor," I said under my breath. "He's one of them. He's involved in this." Chijioke nodded grimly. "Exactly. Stephen has been using his connection with Nnamdi to push your father's company into a vulnerable position. He's been getting insider information to manipulate deals, make false claims, and essentially weaken your father's hold on the empire." I felt the world tilt beneath me. So, Stephen wasn't just after money. He was after control of everything my father built. He was working with these people to undermine my family, and I was too blind to see it. "You were never meant to see it, Nneka," Chijioke said, his voice soft but filled with resolve. "But now you know. You're not helpless anymore. You can fight back." My mind was racing, but I couldn't let myself get caught up in the emotions. I had to stay focused. This was bigger than Stephen's betrayal. This was about securing my family's future, about protecting everything my father had worked for. And I wasn't going to let Stephen or anyone else take it from me. Over the next few days, I spent hours on the phone with lawyers, strategizing the next steps. But the more I learned, the more I realized how dangerous this fight was going to be. Stephen had allies, connections that I had never known existed. He wasn't just a man I had married. He was a man deeply embedded in a world I couldn't even begin to comprehend. But the more I learned, the more I saw my chance. It wasn't just about winning in the courtroom, it was about taking control of the narrative. I couldn't just be the victim of a cheating husband. I had to expose the full extent of Stephen's betrayal. I had to reveal the depths of his treachery to everyone. His business partners, our friends, the media. Only then would I be able to truly regain control of my life. Edaora was my sounding board throughout this process. She listened, encouraged me, and helped me keep my head straight. She could see the toll it was taking on me, but she also knew that I was stronger than I realized. "Nneka," she said one evening as we sat together, "you can't fight this battle alone. You need allies, people who are loyal to you, not to Stephen." I nodded, knowing she was right, but the idea of trusting anyone again after everything that had happened felt like an impossible task. Still, I couldn't ignore her advice. I needed a team, and I needed to be strategic about it. It wasn't just about getting revenge on Stephen anymore. It was about reclaiming my future. I started making calls, reaching out to old family friends, business contacts my father had trusted for years. Some of them were more than willing to help, others hesitant, not fully understanding the gravity of the situation. But one by one, I was able to build a network of people who would stand by me in this fight. People who could help me expose Stephen's plot and turn the tide in my favor. But as I continued to strategize, a new worry crept into my mind. Mimi. She had been so quiet, so elusive. She hadn't made any public moves, and I couldn't help but wonder if she knew something I didn't. Was she planning her next move? Or was she waiting for Stephen to act first? I couldn't take any chances. I needed to find her, confront her, and figure out what she was really up to. But how could I get close to her without revealing everything I knew? There was only one way to find out. I had to play her game. The days bled into one another, filled with calculations and strategies. But one thought consumed me more than anything else. Mimi. I had to find out exactly what she was planning and how far she was willing to go to secure her part in this tangled web. Was she working alongside Stephen out of love, or was it all just about money and power? I needed answers, and I wasn't going to wait any longer. I had heard rumors of Mimi's frequent visits to high-end restaurants, shopping malls, and even business meetings, places where the elite of Lagos gathered. It was clear she was living in a world I couldn't even imagine. But this was exactly the kind of world Stephen had wanted to be part of: wealth, status, and the power that came with it. Edaora had been my rock throughout this ordeal, and I knew she wouldn't let me go into this alone. "Nneka, are you sure about this?" she asked, concern lacing her voice when I told her my plan. Confronting Mimi now might set things off. "You don't know what she's capable of." "I know, Edaora, but the longer I wait, the more I lose. Stephen and Mimi have been playing me for too long. If I want to get control of this, I have to take the first step. I can't let them keep pulling the strings," I said, my resolve firm. "I'm not backing down." We spent the night going over the details, how I would approach Mimi, where I would meet her, and what I needed to say to get the truth out of her. I wasn't going in blind. I had to be calculated and precise. The next day, I put my plan into action. I called Mimi's office under the pretense of business, saying I needed to speak with her about an important issue related to Stephen. To my surprise, she agreed to meet. We set a time and place. A chic cafe in the heart of Lagos, an upscale spot where business deals were made and secrets were exchanged. It was perfect. When I arrived, Mimi was already sitting at a corner table, dressed in a sleek red dress that screamed power and sophistication. Her presence exuded confidence, and I could see why Stephen had been drawn to her. But as I walked towards her, I reminded myself that I wasn't here to admire her. I was here to get the truth. "Good afternoon, Mimi," I greeted her. sitting down without waiting for her to invite me. She smiled, her eyes scanning me with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. Nneka, it's been a while. How's everything? I didn't return the smile. I'm fine, but I'm here because I need answers. And I'm sure you're the one who can give them to me. Her smile faltered slightly, but she regained her composure quickly. I'm afraid I don't quite understand what you mean. What answers are you looking for? I leaned forward, my voice cold and firm. I know about you and Stephen, Mimi. I know what you've been doing behind my back. I want to know exactly what you're after. What's the deal with my father's business? And how far are you willing to go to take it? Mimi's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise, but she quickly masked it with a neutral expression. I'm not sure what you're implying, Nneka, she said, her voice smooth, almost too smooth. Stephen and I have been nothing but professional. I don't think you have any reason to be concerned. I could hear the lie in her voice. Don't lie to me, Mimi. I've seen the emails. I know about your plans with Stephen. I know you've been working together to gain control of my father's empire. For the first time, I saw her eyes flicker with something other than confidence. Fear, maybe, or perhaps anger. You don't know anything, she hissed, her tone turning sharp. You think you can just waltz in here and accuse me of things you don't understand? You have no idea who you're dealing with. I remained calm, keeping my focus on her. I know exactly who I'm dealing with, Mimi, and I know that you and Stephen have been planning something much bigger than an affair. You've been using me, my family, and my father's wealth to get what you want. I'm done being in the dark about this. I'm done letting you and Stephen play me. Her hands clenched into fists, but she didn't lash out. Instead, she let out a slow breath, as if weighing her next move. You don't know what you're asking, Nneka. You think you can just tear everything down and walk away with your head held high? That's not how the world works. People like you and your father, people who have power, don't just let it go. You think I'll back down because you've caught on? No, this is bigger than you. I felt a wave of nausea hit me as she spoke. It was the first time I truly understood the magnitude of what I was up against. Mimi wasn't just a lover in an affair. She was someone who had been scheming, manipulating, and planning to take control of my father's empire. She was ruthless, and Stephen had allowed it all to happen. You and Stephen are nothing but a pair of vultures, I said, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and disgust. But you won't get away with this. Not if I have anything to say about it. Mimi stood up, straightening her dress as she looked down at me, her eyes cold. You think you can stop us? You think you can bring us down? Don't make me laugh, Nneka. You're out of your depth. I stood up too, my resolve hardening. I may be out of my depth now, but not for long. You won't win. I'll make sure of it. With that, I turned and walked out of the cafe, the weight of the confrontation sinking in. Mimi had shown me her true colors. She was dangerous, and I couldn't take her lightly. But I also knew something now that I didn't before. The stakes were higher than I had ever imagined. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about power, and I wasn't going to let Stephen, Mimi, or anyone else take it from me. The confrontation with Mimi left me shaken, but it also made something crystal clear. I couldn't afford to hold back anymore. I had been living in the shadows of my own marriage, my own family's legacy, for too long. Stephen, Mimi, and the other unknown players in this twisted game had underestimated me. They thought I would bow down, they thought I was just another piece to be used. But they were wrong. I spent the next few days in constant motion. Chuka was helping me, but his involvement, as much as I wanted to trust him, still felt precarious. I needed a stronger ally, someone who could expose Stephen and Mimi without hesitation. That's when I reached out to my father's old business partner, Mr. Osage. He had always been a loyal friend to our family, and I knew that if anyone could help me, it would be him. The meeting was set in one of the most upscale private lounges in Lagos. I walked into the room, my heart pounding, but my mind focused. Mr. Osage was already seated, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his expression unreadable. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man, always impeccably dressed, and today was no exception. His eyes met mine with a knowing gaze as I sat down. "Nneka, I've heard rumors," he said, his voice low, "but I want to hear it from you. What's really going on?" I didn't waste any time. I told him everything about Stephen's betrayal, the emails, the business dealings with Mimi, and the dangerous men who were trying to tear my father's empire apart. I told him about the confrontation at the cafe and the coldness I had felt when Mimi threatened me. Mr. Osage listened intently, nodding occasionally as I spoke. When I finished, there was a long silence. I could see the wheels turning in his head, but he didn't speak right away. "You've always been your father's daughter, Nneka," he finally said, his voice steady. "Strong, determined. I respect that. But what you're telling me is bigger than you think. Stephen and Mimi, they've been playing a dangerous game. And now it's time to play by our rules." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "What do you mean by our rules?" He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine. "We're not just going to expose them, we're going to take back what's ours. But we need leverage. We need a way to make them pay for what they've done." I nodded slowly, my pulse quickening. "I'm ready to do whatever it takes." Mr. Osage smiled, but it was a cold, calculating smile. "Good. I've been in this business for decades, Nneka. I know how to make people talk. I know how to use their own greed against them. But you'll have to make some tough choices. You'll have to decide just how far you're willing to go." The words hung in the air. I wasn't naive. I knew this wasn't just about moral justice. This was about power, taking it back, holding on to it, and making sure no one else could take it from me again. "Do you trust me, Nneka?" he asked, his voice steady, as though he could sense my hesitation. I nodded without thinking. "Yes, I trust you." "Then we'll begin," he said, his tone decisive. The days that followed were a whirlwind. We moved quickly, gathering evidence, working with insiders, and setting up meetings with people who were just as determined as we were to take Stephen and Mimi down. I felt the power shift as we moved through the shadows of the business world. Every move we made was calculated, every word spoken with precision. I was no longer the woman betrayed. I was a force, and nothing, no one, was going to stand in my way. The final blow came when Mr. Osage and I arranged a meeting with Stephen. We knew it was time to confront him, to lay all the cards on the table. I needed him to see that this was no longer just about me or Mimi, it was about taking back control. The meeting took place at a secluded villa outside the city, far away from the prying eyes of the media and our families. When Stephen arrived, he looked confident, almost smug. He had no idea what was coming. I stood with Mr. Osage, both of us ready. Stephen walked in, his eyes flicking between us, but his smug smile faltered as he saw the documents spread out on the table. "What is this, Nneka?" he demanded, his voice cold, though there was a flicker of unease in his eyes. "This is the end of your little game, Stephen," I said, my voice steady, my eyes meeting his. "These are the documents that will expose everything. Your affair with Mimi, your plans to take my father's company, everything. It's over." His face paled, but he quickly regained his composure. "You think you can just threaten me? Do you have any idea who you're dealing with?" "I'm not threatening you," I replied, leaning forward. "I'm taking back what's mine. Everything you've tried to destroy. My marriage, my family, my father's legacy. It's all coming down, and you'll pay for it." The silence that followed was heavy. Stephen, for the first time since this entire ordeal began, seemed genuinely afraid. He could no longer hide behind his wealth or his power. The walls were closing in on him. "You can't do this, Nneka," he said, his voice shaky now. "You don't know what you're up against." "I know exactly what I'm up against," I replied, my voice calm but resolute. "And I'm not backing down." Mr. Osage stepped forward, his presence imposing. You've crossed the line, Stephen. This is bigger than just you and Nneka. There are people who will make sure you're held accountable for everything you've done. Stephen's eyes darted between us, realizing too late that he had lost control. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of relief. The battle wasn't over, but the tide had turned. Stephen and Mimi might have thought they could destroy me, but I was stronger than they could have ever imagined. This was my fight, and I was finally ready to win. The days after the confrontation felt like a whirlwind. Stephen and Mimi's world was crumbling around them, and they knew it. For the first time, I could see fear in Stephen's eyes, a fear that hadn't been there before. It was a humbling sight, one that I had never thought I'd witness. The man who had once been so arrogant, so sure of himself, was now backed into a corner. He knew his empire, built on lies and betrayal, was about to collapse. I sat in my living room, staring at the documents on the coffee table. They were the key to everything, proof of Stephen's dealings, his lies, and the dangerous game he had played. The evidence was irrefutable. There was no way out for him now. I had made sure of it. Adaora was with me, as always, helping me stay grounded. "You did the right thing, Nneka," she said, her voice calm but supportive. "Now it's time to take the next step. You can't let him get away with this." "I won't," I replied, my voice resolute. "But I won't let it destroy me either. I have to move forward." The phone call came late that afternoon. It was from my father's lawyer. "Nneka, we've managed to secure everything. The company is protected. The board is fully aware of what Stephen has been doing, and we're taking legal action." I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. My father's legacy, the empire he had built with so much blood, sweat, and tears, was safe. Stephen's plan to tear it down had failed. But it wasn't just about business anymore. This was about something deeper, the damage to my family, to me, and to my children. I couldn't change what had happened, but I could ensure it wouldn't happen again. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady. "And please make sure my father knows how grateful I am for everything. He didn't have to help, but he did. I won't forget it." The lawyer assured me that everything was under control, and I hung up, feeling a sense of relief I hadn't felt in weeks. But even though I had won the battle, there was still one last thing I needed to do: confront Stephen. The following day, I arranged to meet him at a neutral location, a small cafe near his office. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew this would be the final piece in this painful chapter of my life. When Stephen walked in, his face was drawn, his posture slumped. He looked like a man who had lost everything. And in many ways, he had. The man who had once seemed invincible was now a shell of himself, a man stripped of his power. He sat down across from me, his eyes downcast. "I guess I don't have to ask why you wanted to see me," he said quietly. "You've got me cornered, Nneka. I know that. I know everything's falling apart." "You brought this on yourself," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I didn't want any of this, but you made choices. You lied to me, you betrayed me, and now there's no way back." "I didn't want it to go this far," he said, his voice almost pleading. "I was wrong, Nneka. I see that now. I made a mistake. I thought I could get away with it, thought I could have everything. But I've lost it all." I looked at him, feeling a strange sense of finality settle in. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for him, wanted to reach out and tell him that everything would be okay. But the other part of me knew that I couldn't. I couldn't fix what he had broken, and I wasn't going to try. "I don't care about your regrets, Stephen," I said, my voice steady. "The damage is done. You've hurt me, you've hurt our family. But the worst part? You've shown me who you really are. And that's something I'll never forget." He sat back in his chair, his shoulders sagging. "I understand. I've ruined everything, and I'll never be able to make up for it." "You're right," I said, my eyes locking onto his. "But you can start by making sure my father's company is protected. You don't have a say in this anymore. You don't get to control anything. He nodded, his gaze distant. I'll do whatever I can to fix this. I've already lost you, Nneka. I don't want to lose everything else. It was the most vulnerable I had seen him, but I didn't feel satisfaction in it. I didn't want to gloat. I just wanted closure. And in this moment, I realized that I had it. I wasn't the same woman who had married Stephen all those years ago. I wasn't the same woman who had stood by him through all his lies. I had grown stronger, more resilient, and more determined to protect my family's future. I hope you figure it out, Stephen, I said quietly, standing up to leave. But don't expect me to be a part of it anymore. I'm done. I walked out of the cafe, feeling the weight of the past few months lift off my shoulders. The battle was over and I had won. But as I stepped out into the bright Lego sunshine, I knew the real work had just begun. I had to rebuild, not just my life, but my trust in myself. I had to protect my children, my family, and my father's legacy. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready. I had faced betrayal, humiliation, and heartbreak. And yet, here I was, standing strong, ready to fight for the future that was mine to claim. It had been weeks since my last encounter with Stephen. The legal proceedings were in full swing, but the emotional turmoil that had haunted me for months was beginning to fade. I had spent years building a life with Stephen, but now I was building something entirely new, something that was mine and mine alone. I stood at my father's office, looking out over the sprawling city of Lagos. The weight of everything that had happened still lingered, but there was also a sense of peace, a quiet knowing that I had done the right thing. My father's empire was safe, my children were thriving, and I had finally severed the toxic ties that had bound me to a man who had never truly cared for me. Mr. Osage, who had been a steady ally throughout this journey, had been instrumental in ensuring that Stephen's betrayal didn't ruin my father's business. With Stephen's illegal dealings now exposed, we had secured the company's future. And as much as I hated the way things had ended, I knew that there was no other way for me to have reclaimed what was rightfully mine. My phone buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a message from Nneka. Nneka, I'm so proud of you. You've done what so many wouldn't have the courage to do. You're stronger than ever. I can't wait to see the woman you're becoming. We've been through a lot, but you're a warrior. Keep your head up. I smiled, my heart swelling with gratitude. Nneka had been my rock, my lifeline through this entire ordeal. Without her unwavering support, I don't know how I would have made it through. She had shown me the strength I never knew I had, reminding me that no matter how dark things seemed, I was never truly alone. I had already started making plans for the future. I was working on securing a legacy of my own, not just through my father's business, but by building something that reflected my own values, my own vision. I had an idea for a foundation, something that would help young women and children who had been through hardships like I had. I wanted to give them the tools they needed to rise above their circumstances and create a better future. As I reflected on everything I had been through, I realized that this entire journey had taught me something invaluable. The power to forgive not just others but myself. The hurt, the betrayal, the humiliation, it had all been a part of my story, but it wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of the woman I was becoming. That afternoon, I met with my lawyer to finalize the last details of the divorce settlement. Stephen had tried to fight it, but there was no winning for him. Everything he had tried to manipulate had backfired. The world he had built, the lies he had told, all crumbled beneath the weight of the truth. As I left the lawyer's office, I felt lighter. The burden I had carried for so long was finally gone. I was free. Free from Stephen. Free from the lies. Free to chart my own path. But even more than that, I realized that I was no longer defined by what had happened to me. I wasn't the woman who had been cheated on. I wasn't the woman who had been humiliated on that private jet. I was Nneka, a woman who had faced adversity and come out on the other side stronger. I had reclaimed my life, and no one could take that away from me. As I drove home, the warm Lagos breeze rolling through the car windows, I thought about my children. They were my world, and I would fight for them with every ounce of strength I had. The future was uncertain, but I was no longer afraid. I had built a foundation of resilience, of love, and of justice. And that was enough. At the end of the day, I knew that no matter what had happened, no matter how much Stephen had tried to tear us apart, I was still standing. I was still Nneka, strong, determined, and unstoppable. And that was my victory. Thank you so much for your incredible support. Your likes, comments, and shares mean the world to us. Before we dive into today's heart-wrenching story, please subscribe to this channel, turn on the notification bell, and drop a comment below. Let us know where you're watching from. Are you tuning in from Lagos, New York, London, or somewhere else? We love connecting with our global family,